You're all set. Excellent. All right. I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. So thank you all for being here. I am Keith Norris. I am the chair of the Salem Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. And we're excited for our June 13th meeting today. Appreciate all of the engagement we've had so far. I'm going to start us off with a roll call of our board members, starting with Dylan McDowell, the vice chair. Present. Alan Alexander. We lose him? He was on. Okay. We'll see if he makes it on again. Al Holland. Here. Joan Lloyd.
Here.
Debbie Miller.
Here.
Excellent. And then we have two new members who are joining us today. So welcome to Mauricio Flores.
Yeah.
And Zachary Hammerly.
Here, present.
Did I say your last name correctly, Zachary?
Hammerly it is. Yep.
Excellent. Good. And as we get started here with Mauricio and Zachary, I just want to give you guys a chance to provide a few introductions of yourselves as new members here with your first meeting. We'll start, Mauricio, with you.
Yeah, so Mauricio Flores, worked for Pacific Landscape Management, moved to Salem here a year ago, this May. So I'm just excited to start getting involved here in the community.
Excellent. Glad to have you. Yeah. And Zachary?
Yeah, Zach Hammerly. I work over at Western Oregon University, assistant director of the recreation program over there. And I'm super excited to be a part of the team here and looking forward to this meeting and future meetings to come. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thanks, Zachary and Mauricio. Excited to have your participation here on this board. Our next item is approval of the May 2024 minutes. We're going to skip over that because the minutes were not in our packet. And so we will cover approval of those during our next meeting. We have Alan on board. So I'll make note that he's here now. And then we have public comment for any comment not on any item specific to our agenda. And I think we had one of those, Cassie.
Can I go last, actually? I'm supposed to speak with someone who's not here.
Okay,
Be ready later.
We'll see, we can maybe, now is the time on our agenda for public comment on general public comments. And so if we have time at the end of the meeting, we'll try to come back up to that. Would you prefer to just do it now on your own, wing it?
I'll give it my best shot.
Okay,
and,
thank you.
Yeah. Should I stand up there?
Yeah, if you can come up to the podium, that'd be great, thank you. I think everyone else is signed up to comment on the agenda item later, so that's why we can't have other people go for it. At least that's my assumption. Makes sense, okay.
Go ahead and just take one, pass it around. Get a couple here. Good for me, so you can all see what I'm talking about here. Awesome. Well, thanks for having me and allowing me to speak. My name is Cassie Roost, and I work for Marion Soil and Water Conservation District. And I am here today to tell you about a new pilot certification program I just launched at work, and to also propose certifying Englewood Park as part of this program. I was actually invited to speak here today through the Northeast Neighborhood Association with their chair, but I think she's just running a little late, so hopefully she'll be here, but I was invited, I swear. But yeah, this new program, which you can all see that's getting printed up, it's called the Little Habitat Project. And it is a program where you can either certify your home or a community space as designated wildlife habitat. And as you can see on the top there, the goal of this program ultimately is to build community around creating more wildlife corridors and climate resilient plantings within more developed spaces. So places like private yards, schoolyards, common areas, city parks, or even just an apartment balcony garden would be eligible for this program.
Wow.
So no place too big or small. But yeah, as you can see here, our cover here, so we have our certification artwork, one of our native bumblebees pollinating some of my favorite native plants. And you can see the 5 different categories that make up this program, being soil, water, plants, infrastructure, and education. And there's a lot more to it. If I had more time, I'd give you more detail. It's on the inside, but ultimately, this is just a framework of the program. There's a lot more on the website. All of these action items have resources and write-ups to go with it. So there's a lot of education outreach that goes with it. And yeah, I guess the goal of me being here is one, just to announce it. It's a brand new program. So I want you all to get involved and, know that it exists. But also see if we could certify Englewood Park as a part of this program. When I attended their neighborhood association meeting this past week, I received a lot of feedback from the community and they were very excited about the idea, which is how I got the invite to speak here. And I was told that we had to work with this group here in order to officially certify the park. If you did choose to certify, if it's something of interest, you would get some coupons to our plant sales. There's some free plants involved. A year membership to Salem Audubon, and this little sign here that could be featured at the park. There's a QR code, so people can learn more about the program to help create or expand, I should say, more of these pollinator or bird-friendly corridors throughout our city. So that's a great education outreach opportunity, and all of the work that's been done at Englewood Park is just phenomenal and so beautiful to showcase, and I would be honored to officially award the certification to them for all that work that's been done. So that's a quick overview. I don't know the process from here, but the neighborhood association seem to be behind it. Hopefully Lynn will be here soon. But if you have any questions about the program, my email is on the bottom there, the bottom right. And Kathleen with the Marion Salem Water District. You can feel free to reach out after. If you have any questions? Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Cassie. You did great with that one. So that seems like a very cool project and very cool effort to get certified into. In terms of process moving forward, I also don't entirely know. But we can figure that out. And my guess is working with the neighborhood association to bring it forward to us is probably the best way to do that. I'm looking to Rob for thoughts.
Yeah, I can get a hold of Lynn Takata, ask her to write SRAB a letter, and then staff can look at this a little more carefully and bring a recommendation to SRAB.
Perfect. That worked. June, I saw your hand first, so I'll go to you.
Well, I am a member of
Right.
board member of Northeast Neighbors Neighborhood Association.
Yeah.
I do know that there was
All three of these are on
for this project to have the native plantings and everything. So I feel as though the city is already behind this and was destroyed the first time by weather, the ice and everything. And so they had to replant it again. And yes, it's a wonderful thing. So I certainly recommend that it be certified.
Excellent. Thanks, Joan. Debbie?
My question was whether or not a SPIF grant would be something that could be applied for, so
Well,
yes.
Yes is the answer, apparently.
And Englewood Park has received, I think, several SPIF grants for this effort already.
Great, thank you. Excellent. Thanks, Cassie. All right, we are gonna move forward. No other public comment, general public comment, not on agenda items? Okay. We're gonna move forward with agenda item 4A, amendment and restatement of an agreement between the city of Salem and Willamette University in regards to the stadium at Bush Pasture Park. I'm gonna turn it over to Rob from the city to provide our presentation.
Thank you, Chair Norris. And for everyone who's here today, my name is Rob Romnak. I'm the city's park planning manager. Today we have a project that's not a city-led project. However, this discussion day is going to be city-led before we hand it over to you for deliberations. We prepared a written report for this item, so I'm not going to go over that in detail, but I do want to provide a little bit more information for you today. And so I just have some short remarks I want to read out here. First, I want to talk about the park's classification. Bush's Pasture Park is designated as an urban park in Salem's Comprehensive Park System Master Plan. This means it serves the entire city and even could be a regional draw. These parks offer large open spaces for community events and gatherings, while sometimes featuring facilities that are a regional draw. From staff's perspective, this project aligns with the park classification by enhancing existing facilities for public use. I also want to provide a little more context about the cultural landscape management plan for Bush's Pasture Park and Deepwood Estates Gardens. The plan was prepared by the city through a stakeholder engagement process and approved by City Council in July of 2021. The plan documents the significant cultural features of the park, such as the Oregon white oaks, the camas fields, the native and ornamental gardens, and also Pringle Creek, and provides recommendations for ways to protect and enhance these features with 4 management goals and more specific management goals and objectives for zones throughout the park. It also presents an overarching vision for those 2 properties. From staff's perspective, this project aligns with the overarching vision as expressed in that document and as expressed by the Salem community. And again, that vision is a place of active play, family gatherings, protection and enhancement of oaks, wildflowers, and Pringle Creek, natural exploration, a sense of history, and areas of reflection. The proposed baseball field improvements are located within designated management areas that focus specifically on oak and camas conservation. Importantly for this, the city staff has determined that the project presents no harm to these protected elements. I also want to highlight a little bit more about community benefits. The project prioritizes public use and enjoyment of the recreational facilities that are compatible with the use. Going back to that, it is an urban park. The use being the baseball field has been there for a long time. There's a focus on serving Salem's use in this project. I just want to highlight that. I first sat down with Luke Emanuel over 2 years ago. I looked through my emails this morning. From that first day, it's been clear to me that his organization's one of their primary motivations is largely focused on serving the Salem's youth. And I believe this proposal is slated to do that. And so with those kind of opening remarks, I want to invite Rob Passage from Willamette University to just provide an update about the current and I believe final status of the proposal that they're preparing to take forward.
Very distracted about it. So, thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. And this will be pretty short. I know for most members, we had a conversation a couple months ago. Hope you had a chance to go back and read through the answers to the questions that we provided to all of you. We've had a lot of good conversations with folks at the city about this revised amendment. We've continued to have conversations with folks about walkthroughs of the space. And so I just wanted to give, there's just a few slides. We do now have some renderings that I wanted to show folks in terms of what, kind of what we hope this will look like. And if you read the Salem Reporter in the last 24 hours, you saw one of those photos, and there's a few more. And so next slide, again, is just what, this was from the last time we chatted. The project we're trying to install synthetic turf sports lighting is some protective netting at our baseball and softball fields. So I know for this group that we really only care about the baseball field and would be within Fish Park, but it does also include our softball field. Next slide, please. So this is what I think was Rob already prepared, was already in there. Again, just kind of showing that pink part is what we're asking for the additional easement in this renegotiated or restated agreement with the city. And then the next slide. Now this is the space that we're talking about. This is the south edge of the stadium, and again, our hope is right now this is the storage space there. There's no access. Our hope is to connect basically the left field with the right field part of the stands and open up some new spaces for folks to view our games. Next slide. And then this is a new rendering. And so this shows, again, kind of what we're hoping to do. I will say one thing, the netting will not be that dark. I think they made it that dark so that just you could see the outline of it. But basically, as we're working through this would be the path right up next to the building that we're trying to bring around with the fencing to connect what would be, right now, this is currently foul territory and some storage. And we just want to create some, again, more spaces on both sides of the field and also some space out in left field where folks can stand and watch the game. If they don't want to sit in the stands, they have an opportunity. We all know how well kids like to just sit in the stands for a baseball game. And so it's really around for that, a lot around families and having an ability for people to go different places. So that's an overhead view. If you can go to the next slide, this is kind of, kind of ground level that we'd be looking at. Again, that area along the backside of the stadium, we'd be creating a new sidewalk inside, adding this fence for folks that have been there, much nicer looking fence than what currently exists. And then rebuilding a path, the current existing path right outside of that fence. And then next slide, this is another look at the field from what will be grass berm in left field. Again, some additional space that doesn't exist now for folks to watch not only baseball, but also track meets, because our track and football stadium are here. That shows the lights, the turf, the netting, and that's it.
And Rob, just for clarity,
Yes.
these spaces from this angle are all already Willamette University property.
Correct. Yes. Yep. Yeah, if you with what Rob shared before, it's just that pink space in there. What would be on the other side of be back. Yeah. So that is, I just want to make sure I shared that with the group. I know there will be, potentially time for questions, and you all need to have your conversation. Again, we're very excited about this project, very excited about the impact, some of the things that Rob shared about the opportunity for not only the baseball and the softball project and the impact it can have on the community. As folks who have been not only using those spaces, but also making them available to the community and other organizations, I feel like we've been good shepherds of that space and worked very well with the city to make sure when we do have events that we're following the proper procedures. I don't want to put Becky on the spot, but she's been great. She and Melinda have been great to work with. And I hope she would say the same about me and other staff at Willamette for the events that we have held. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Great, thanks, Rob.
And I just have a little bit more before I hand it over back to you. First, an item that's in the agreement that is not highlighted in the staff report is wind screens for the tennis courts at Bush's Pasture Park. Willamette University is generously proposing to take over the maintenance and replacement of those wind screens as part of this agreement. This is a small but meaningful thing from my perspective. It's one less thing the city staff will have to maintain out there. And again, these are the wind screens that surround the tennis court. I also want to talk about where we are in the process. So this is the beginning of what I see as a city review and approval process. If the board was in a position to advance this item to city council today, it would then go to city council on June 25th. That's at least what it's scheduled to do. At that point, the city would then, so that's for the agreement. That's what we're talking about today is this revised agreement. Following that, the next day, we would ask the city manager to co-sign their land use applications. Just like any other developer, just like a park development, they have to go through the city's land use development process. There are two land use processes that will be submitted concurrently. One is a site plan review with adjustments. And so that is a process that will go through the city's land use process. Also, they'll have to do historic design review. And that is a type 3 land use procedure, which that means it is a big deal. It will have a public hearing. That public hearing will be at the Historic Landmarks Commission. And those two approvals will be then required for them to proceed with the project. So this agreement is one element, and then there's these land use processes. And I just want to highlight that. And with that, Chair Norris, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. In terms of kind of our process here for considering our board's perspectives on the agenda, what we'll do now is have some questions from the board to Rob, any clarifying questions on this particular presentation. Then we'll have public comment. We've got just 3 public comments signed up, I believe. And so we'll have public comment period. And then we'll be able to discuss as a board kind of our approach moving forward with this decision item. So with that, does that process make sense, everybody? Okay, with that, any clarifying questions for Rob? Al?
I've got 2. First, that I don't know that Rob can answer that. Are 90-foot high lights needed? That's like 20 feet higher than the existing lights, I believe.
So currently what our lighting company has spec'd out is 80-foot lights. So, and to avoid, so there's a couple different technologies with lighting. And so there's a company called Musco where they actually uplight. So baseballs fly high in the air. You want to be able to see the baseball at night. And so lights typically are a little higher than they would be for the tennis courts or even the football stadium or our soccer field. There are some companies that, again, like Musco, that will use uplighting to be able to shine lights on the ball. But the other thing that does is it shines lights up into the air. The company that we're going with, and in some instances, they'll use 70-foot poles in some spots, but then they uplight. The company that we're going with is using 80-foot poles so they can make sure that they get the coverage of the ball within the field itself, but they're not providing any light above the fixtures. So that's why the height.
And member Holland, I'm just jumping there. The height of the light poles is one of the items is the adjustments that's going to be considered through the maintenance process.
Thank you. In that vein, following a little more, there's concern for skylight, ambient light. And an increase in that is something that we want to minimize, of course. So is that an item of attention that's being given?
Yeah, I think there was, I don't know if it was in, I think it was in the answers that I provided, that it talks about the spread and the coverage. And so, the nice thing about the new technology is it really can focus on the field. So it's gonna light the field. It really doesn't light those areas around it. And so, yes, I mean, that's, as we've been looking at the different companies, the impact of around, and we've had some people share, right? Like the football lights and the way the old technology, you can see those and different things. So we've had people share those concerns and we were trying to address those with, through the vendors that we've been talking about.
Thank you. The second question is relevant to plastics. There's concern afoot about microplastics in the environment being very pervasive, and adding artificial turf may be something that would contribute towards that. I'm wondering if there's material or means of avoiding that additional contribution by either not using the turf or using a chitin turf that is not likely to be problematic.
Yeah, so that's not something that it's a technical stuff, and that would be something I'd go to our landscape architect. I know he addressed that question in a town hall that we had. Now it seems like 7 or 8 months ago. I could get this group more information on that, but it's not something I feel comfortable kind of sharing. I do have documentation from our turf company in terms of the safety of the products they use and the testing and those type of things, but I wouldn't try to be very sensitive.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Alan?
You're frozen.
Yes, it's connected, bros.
Okay,
Can I ask?
Dylan?
I had a clarifying question about the south gate. And I know in your question or your answers, there was comment about possibly moving that depending on some factors. Could you just elaborate on that verbally for us? What
Yeah.
that movement would look like?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I'm a visual person, so I'm pointing at a picture that doesn't exist, right? So we have a south gate currently that exists right next to our concession stand that we use that space. And so as we were looking, and actually as we were having conversations and walking through with different folks, there was some concern about if we continue to use that south gate and people congregate in that space, there's a tremendous amount of cameras kind of right outside that gate, right? And so what we looked at, walked through again with some neighborhood folks to say, is there a space along a new created path that would get us clear of that? And the concern was, if you look at it, as you walk out the gate, and I could see it, if they needed to walk up the hill, they were gonna walk straight through, straight through that area. And so there is an existing path, but they'd have to go around, and so, again, we just decided we would move it, to a spot that was identified as one that would not, that would allow free flow out of that. And so it would be a little bit, it would be in the new fencing and a little bit to the east, not directly behind the stadium.
The one piece I was a little confused about, is that for sure gonna happen? It sounded like there was that was being explored still, but is that pretty much gonna happen at this point?
I mean, so we have a gate there.
Okay.
And that gate actually gets used for Austin 3000, it gets used for cross country, it gets used for a lot of different events. And so we feel like we need to maintain
So we'll be adding
that
another
space. So it'd be basically taking the existing gate and just moving it slightly.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll
It's not
go,
creating a new.
I think we've got Alan back online, and so we'll go, Alan, you have your hand up for a clarifying question?
Yes, I appreciate it. This is to Rob. Rob, is there any
Couple of us.
cost specifically to parks and generally to the city that would come about as a result of this project?
So there's a potential cost savings to the parks because of the aspect I just mentioned regarding the windscreens at the tennis courts. I wouldn't represent that as a tremendous amount of money. And then in terms of cost to parks, I mean, there is staff time involved in this process today. But largely speaking, no, there's no direct cost implication to the city.
Okay, so the city would have no obligations as a result of this agreement, no additional obligations.
That's correct.
Okay, any other clarifying questions before we go to public comment? Debbie?
Yeah, so I have two things that I'm concerned about. I think this is a great project. After walking around with you guys, I just think it's really gonna be good for the city, for the kids. My concerns are the environmental impact and then also the parking. And I know you're trying really hard to address the parking, and there's hope for things in the future. The environmental impact, I'm concerned about the plastics, the PFAS, the microplastics. And also whether or not this is post-consumer plastic, because that would offset some of the runoff. And I know the city's planning on monitoring some of that, some of the PFAS is going into the waste stream. But I really would like to know more about that, and I was hoping maybe I'd send you information that you don't have right now.
Yeah, and I'm taking notes, I'm not texting people. I always feel bad because I just use this now and I'm like, right in the middle of you talking, I'm like, just pull out my phone and just, so.
Okay, I think, is that, okay, cool. We will go to public comment, and then just to be clear, we'll have additional time for discussion.
I do have a question, if that's
Oh,
okay.
yeah, go for it, Zachary.
Hey, I got a couple of questions here. I'm taking notes. I've read the whole proposal, and it looks like, so the university has always had priority in past agreements for facility use. Am I correct on that? Just to clarify that?
Yes, so this is Rob Romanak. Yes, the facility is largely owned by the university, and so they have maintained priority historically since we've had an agreement.
And then they are waiving rental fees for city use and school district use and stuff like that for the next 10 years. Has that been like a very good relationship in the past under the current agreement that we would be renewing today? Has there been any big fights, arguments over like exactly when the public gets in there versus when the university has the priority of space?
In my time with the city, I've been in the city for almost 7 years. I am not aware of any conflicts we've had. We do typically hold, and I might, if Becky's available, I might ask her to fill in here. We typically hold an event at McCulloch Stadium once a year. It's the kids relay. We have previously paid a fee, and I should have said this earlier, but as part of the agreement, the city would receive a fee waiver for that event. It's an annual event.
So there is like a revenue kind of source for the city here, like we wouldn't be paying some of these fees that we've already or historically been paying.
Yeah, yes, and I wouldn't characterize it as a lot of money, but it would be less. Yes.
Okay. Is there any other additional revenue items that could be a part of this program for Parks and Recreation? Or has that been thought about yet? Like, hey, are we actually gonna like charge them rent on this easement part, or how does that? We're just for doing this classic agreement.
So I think the exchange here is able to allow greater encroachment in the park. There's a commitment for greater community use of the facility. That does include the city's use, and it also includes the school district's use of the improved facility.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for those clarifiers. I just wanted to make sure that I'm new here, so I'm just educating myself. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Excellent. We will move to public comment. We've got 3 people signed up. You'll have 5 minutes each. I'll call you out in order here. To provide your comments, so if you can step up here at the podium to provide those. And Evan, we have you first. And let me just make sure everybody else signed in. Sleep. Thank you. Go for it, Evan.
Thank you, Chair Norris, members of SPRAB. I'm Evan West. I'm a resident of Ward 7. Over the course of several months now, concerned citizens such as myself have advised you to ask deep questions and listen to presentations with a healthy dose of skepticism. This week, the staff report on summer collegiate baseball demonstrated why this was necessary. The report reads like quite a few of my own high school English reports, if I may say so, cobbled together from the free trial excerpts of Cliff Notes, but often, unfortunately, the Cliff Notes is from the wrong book entirely. This would be hilarious and harmless even if it were not indicative of a larger trend of city staff ignoring objective evidence to recommend development, no matter the harm it causes to our community. This practice has created a trust deficit, but SPRAB has a unique opportunity to contribute to bridging that deficit today by refusing to endorse the commercialization of Bush's Pasture Park. That the haphazard report is replete with factual inaccuracies and patronizing dismissals should alarm this board as a matter of principle. The assertion that the cultural landscape management plan is simply a guiding doctrine that can be overridden by staff who know better at any time is an insult to the collective intelligence of our community, and even more insulting as a statement on the value of SPRAB. If staff simply know better than the members of this board, I suggest that you ask yourselves why you dedicate any of your valuable time and service here at all. Because of this defamatory statement alone, SPRAB should postpone any action until your July meeting and request a higher quality staff report be created. This action would also address the fact that the staff report was released inappropriately late, preventing careful consideration from subject matter experts, including review by neighborhood associations. The late release may have had innocuous intentions, but it presents as a calculated attempt by the city of Salem, Willamette University, and Salem Baseball to prevent this board from doing the quality work that it is known for, and prevent the citizens of Salem from having proper input. And there's an emerging pattern of behavior similar to this from Willamette University and Salem Baseball, of attempts to obfuscate the true intentions of this project and to delay response to citizen input until the cake has already been baked and responses are irrelevant. This is demonstrated by the fact that citizens at an April neighborhood association meeting posed more than 20 questions and concerns separate from the few that are addressed by your staff report. But to date, representatives from WU or Salem Baseball have not addressed those concerns in spite of the fact that they were in attendance. WU and Salem Baseball hope to trick you into believing that they have the full support of the community. You'll be presented today with a petition from citizens that plainly demonstrates otherwise. I ask this board to fulfill its service to the city of Salem by unequivocally recognizing the voices that are imploring of you. The project proposal cannot move forward as written. For its many failings, please do allow me to give credit to what the staff report does get right. The use of WU facilities for Salem Kaiser athletics is an excellent idea. Willamette could open their facilities for this purpose tomorrow if they genuinely wanted to. The funding for this purpose is secured from the legislature, and there is no widespread opposition to this because there are few, if any, facility upgrades needed to make this happen. There would be no need for additional encroachment on park land if WU were truly acting benevolently. If SPRAB feels the need to endorse anything today, we would welcome the endorsement of a limited use of WU facilities by Salem Kaiser Athletics and other nonprofit partners. Nonprofit use is categorically different from the commercial use by Salem Baseball that the staff report inaccurately characterizes as one single major event. Major events in the park include the art fair, the soapbox derby, and the slalom skateboard events. They happen once yearly. As many as 30 games of commercial baseball cannot be grouped with these events. Board members, we know this question doesn't end with you today, but you can preserve the integrity of this advisory board by making an informed decision and taking one of two actions: postponing consideration or endorsing non-commercial use by public partners only. If you were to endorse the proposal as written, the challenges that arise later at City Council and potentially even the Land Use Board of Appeals would reflect that this body accepted substandard reporting from the city staff and capitulated to pressure from non-Salem business interests. I know that that's not what this board is known for or capable of, and so I look forward to presenting the quality work from you that represents the needs of our park and the needs of the citizens of Salem. And I wanted to mention additional concerns include the fact that though representatives from White University claims they've addressed light pole heights, microplastics, and cost at various meetings, including their town hall, these were quickly dismissed, including the fact that their obligation to keep the park trash-free, secure, et cetera, was passed off as being the city's responsibility. That's going to be a cost the city has to deal with. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have for me.
Great, thank you, Evan. Next up, we have Ram Kimmich. Rob.
Thank you, members of the advisory board of Parks and Recreation Salem, for hearing my testimony, and thank you for volunteering to fill these roles. My name is Rob Kimmich. I live in Ward 2. I appreciate the amendment and restatement published by Rob Rumenick, Parks Planning Manager, for this meeting. I noticed that no date was provided when the amendment was written and suggests that not enough time has been provided to the citizens of Salem to consider the amendment. I also noted that the maps are very small scale, which makes evaluation of the impacts difficult, particularly concerning things like parking. I'm very concerned about the recent proposal for a commercial baseball operation in Bush Park. In Salem, we have several processes, such as this board, in place to develop our community resources, such as Bush Park. I feel that these processes are being rushed to approve this proposal. It is important to me as a taxpayer of this city that we be given better information about the development plan. Today, I request that you do not approve this proposal for commercial use of Bush Park. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rob. Joan Stimbridge.
Thank you, Chair Norris and this board. Thank you for this opportunity to share my deep concern about this proposal. Let me be clear. I support increased use of Bush Park Stadium for Salem Kaiser schools, the Y, and the Boys and Girls Club. Willamette University was gifted with $3 million of public money to improve opportunities, and that what you're reading is extra from me. So Willamette University was gifted with $3 million of public money to improve opportunities for Salem youth to play baseball and softball. That was what was in the bill. That money gifted to Willamette was to allow for installation of artificial turf. They have the money. Nothing is stopping Willamette from creating more opportunities for Salem youth to play baseball and softball right now. I also support having a new for-profit baseball league come to Salem. I encourage that league to use the Volcano Stadium or Chemeketa Community College field to play their games. What I oppose is having a for-profit business move into Bush Park because it violates the vision, goals, and overall management guidelines of the cultural landscape management plan. I have carefully read the plan. I cannot find one word that the plan encourages a commercial business to take priority over families and individuals enjoying summer evenings in their downtown public park. This recommendation violates the intent of the deed and likely violates zoning code. Sometimes Each of us faces difficult and uncomfortable duties. You are in such a situation right now because you are stewards of our beautiful Bush Park, and I thank you for your stewardship. You are fortunate to be in a position to preserve Bush Park for the ages. I urge you to be brave. I urge you to do what you know is the right thing to do. And please reject this ill-advised recommendation. And as of this morning, 114 people who use and love Bush Park join me in asking you to please say no. Thank you for your consideration. If you want, you can.
Thank you, Joan. And then we have Ellen Stevens.
Thank you all. I identify as a half-century user of Bush Park. As a founding member of the Mission Street Parks Conservancy, a decades-long volunteer working with others to restore and protect Camas fields and native white wolves. And today, as a citizen opposing summer baseball in Bush Park. Last October, when I first learned of the proposal, friends in recent conversations reminded me that at that time I replied, this will be the beginning of the commercialization of Bush Park. I'm concerned how little mention has been included in the addendum to protect natural resources. Budget shortfalls in the city prepare us for less care. Foot traffic especially concerns me. Attendees will take shortcuts to and from cars. New man paths, sometimes called social paths, will be created. This will impact the CTPC, the critical tree protection zones, and the Camas fields. I shift my concerns now to traffic and parking. Rush hour traffic is at its peak along Mission Street at the same time that hundreds of baseball fans will be searching for parking. I hope the city will commence a traffic study. In the past 2 weeks, I've paid close attention to usage in some parking areas. Lower LaFell has 97 parking spaces, excluding the adjacent southeast corner. On Thursday, June 6th at 5:45 p.m., 61 of the spaces were being used for a 70th birthday party using the picnic area and the playground. Ultimate frisbee in the large field, adult softball practice, plus the usual dog walkers, runners, etc. At the same time, up above in the upper LaFell parking lot, all but 2 of the 43 parking spaces were filled. I could not identify any obvious uses. It seemed that park users were spread all around doing the usual daily activities. This week, on Monday, June 10th, I counted 142 parking places in the Mission Street parking lot, excluding the east area near the creek. On this day at 6 p.m., 58 cars were parked. Obvious activities were a large dog training class and a reunion in the picnic area near the Derby track. On a summer baseball day, would parking have been available for these park users? I thought I only had 3 minutes, so that's 3 minutes. Do I have another minute?
You do. I was feeling generous today. Go for it.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I would like to add that I wish that I or we could have had the chance to rebut Rob's answers to the commissioner's questions. As a longtime art fair volunteer, I find that it's very difficult to herd crowds after an event to where you want them to go. No matter how hard, how many volunteers you have, they're gonna do the shortcuts and they're gonna go right through those camas fields at the bottom of the slope at the south end of that field. Trash, city, who's gonna pick up the trash outside? It'll be all over the park. Again, we're reminded that the city has less and less budget. That would not be under Willamette's facilities group, but of the city. Also, I've had a conversation earlier with Katya Meyer from Willamette. I happened to be in the park the day that she was with, she's biology department. I think it's called geoengineering, maybe. She was in the park with a group of students taking samples from Pringle Creek, testing for microplastics. I had a chat with her, followed up with a phone call, telling her that I was interested in artificial turf in the stadium and its resultant trickle down possibly into the creek. She assured me in that Monday call that on Friday, she would get back to me with information about artificial turfs. I never heard from her twice after that. I sent follow-up emails and never heard from her. Somebody told me I should have figured that out a long time ago. Why?
Thanks, Ellen. All right, I don't have anybody else on my list for public comment, but I'll open it up. Anybody else? Okay. Well, with that, I am gonna turn it over to Dylan, okay. It's like, I think I'm gonna need you here.
Yeah.
Leaving at the opportunity. I'm gonna turn over to Dylan to kind of kick off our discussion of the question at hand here. And I think right, our question is specifically related to this draft agreement that's before us and whether or not we are moving forward that draft agreement to city council. That draft agreement will go to city council. Right now, it's more of a matter of, do we recommend city council reject that agreement? Do we recommend they approve that agreement? Or do we recommend that they may approve that agreement with modifications, right? And so those are kind of the three avenues that I see us being able to move forward with today in regards to the question that we're being faced with. And so I'll turn it over to Dylan to talk a little bit about a draft motion that he's put together.
Thank you, Chair Norris. So as Chair Norris mentioned, I have a draft motion here that I'll quickly explain, and then hopefully we'll get a second, at least for the sake of discussion, and then we can walk through that and then figure out if we want to amend and go from there. I think, to reiterate, I think after talking with staff and listening to everything, really considering our role in this process as SPRAB, is that we are very focused on the fact that what is the impact on the parks, and that there is a whole separate land use process, and we need to really make sure we're staying within scope of what we can decide, and where does that begin and end? And so that really begins and ends with the 4 or so feet that extend into the park for the path, that extend with the parking impacts and some of those things that we've talked about. And so trying to make sure we're really staying within that realm, knowing that there's going to be other processes to address other parts of this. I think one of the things is some of these points about what happens within the stadium is already Willamette University property. And so we have to be careful about what we can dictate versus what we can't. And so I think as we think about how that might impact the users though, I wanted to put together a motion here that tries to address some of the parking concerns, which I find to be some of the most challenging. I think Willamette and Salem baseball have done a really good job of addressing some of these in Q&A, but I want to make sure that, in our comments and everything, but I want to make sure we're putting some of that into this agreement, into our recommendations to make sure there's a little bit, we're putting that commitment in writing. And that's not to say that I don't trust them to follow through, but I want to make sure that's an official part of this. So what I want to move here is that SPRAB recommends City Council accept the proposed amendment and reinstatement of the agreement between the city and Willamette University with the following modifications. Number one, removing the 8th whereas statement, that involves the third parties not signatories on the agreement. Basically, once again, our role is within Willamette and SPRAB and the city, and so really trying to keep that within our framing. A commitment to use Willamette University's parking areas for large events and athletic activities, including shuttle service to the stadium. This is one of those topics that has been discussed, and I think having this in writing, making sure that we are continuing to use the Willamette facilities as much as possible to try and deter from using only parks facilities, parking. Obviously, there's some of both, but there is ample parking there as was identified, and trying to use that as to the best effect. To provide staff parking attendance at the Mission Street Park lot on event days to help direct that, I think is really important. Once again, to get at these concerns about mixed use and making sure we have park users able to use their space. And a commitment for Willamette University to explore partnerships with Chariots and look for covered bike parking and other opportunities to encourage alternative transportation modes separate from just personal vehicles. This came up during Q&A a little bit last time about possibly things like Chariots having discounts for bus passes and things like that. If folks are gonna bike ride, specifically put covered bike parking in here because making sure it's protected and covered in the state of Oregon is kind of important. We otherwise end up with a wet bike seat. And so really thinking about how do we not, sometimes people will put out just a park bike rack, but how do we make sure it's actually usable? So I wanna explore that. And then finally, and most importantly, an annual review of impacts to the city's park property and facilities and surrounding communities such as parking, noise, and light. Unintended impacts shall be addressed to continue the agreement. Unintended impacts may be addressed through amendments to the agreement or through the development of operational protocols and procedures. And I think there's been some great conversations and concessions already made to this effect. So putting this in there, things will change. There's a lot of unknowns about the size of the user base, the size of all these different elements. And so going into a year, every year, being able to say, where is their impact on campus? So where, does the south gate need to move slightly as it has been adjusted now? Having room for that conversation every year, I think is important without completely stopping the process where we are now. So that's my motion included.
So I will consider that motion read as stated on the screen. Despite no one's ad-libbing in there in the further description of the process. Do we have a second for that motion?
Second. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Joan. So that opens up this motion for discussion and this topic for discussion. Thank you. Thoughts? Al?
I'm real ambivalent here. There are good points here. I like the motion. I think they address some of the concerns. An underlying bottom consideration or thought I have, it comes back with, where did this $3 million start? Was this, who asked for it or who gave it, or why was it originated, and why did it come? How is it necessary and important only to be at Willamette? I have nothing against the school. I'm just concerned about all these other impacts that have been brought up and the urban location of it. I'm wondering if all of these benefits could not accrue exactly as they are intended and hoped and described if it was just located in the Chemeketa Community College area. It seems like the same things could happen if it was out there, but with less problems. And it would also address the notion of kind of helping out Northeast, which is not the best part of our town. And they need help. So I don't know if that's going to be enough to make it work. So I'm not sure if I have any more questions, but why wasn't Chemeketa considered? Did anybody have that?
He's right.
So I don't know that we have that answer available on our board. And I think.
And can it still be?
So I think, Al, from my perspective, that is outside the question we're being asked.
Yeah.
Right? The question we're being asked is an agreement between the university and the city for the university to adapt their facilities in a way that they see fit. Within the, right, and so they're asking us for the ability to adapt their facilities to meet this need. They need the things outlined in this agreement to be able to do that. The particular use then of those facilities, who it's used by, what it's used for, is up to the university, right? I mean, it is spelled out in the agreement. And so I think in terms of Salem baseball and where they choose to ultimately locate themselves or not, or their continuation years down the road or not, is irrelevant to the question we're being asked, is at least my take on it. And so I think, does that make sense, right? Because I think your question is totally valid, right, in terms of the commercialization of Salem baseball. But I guess my question is if Salem baseball never entered into the discussion and Willamette University came to us and said, hey, we're looking to enhance our ball field to be better for our own players for XYZ, which this is certainly going to do, how would we feel about it then?
Chair, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
As in your record, the final question, response in attachment 3 addresses this item. I just want to point that out.
Thank you. Any other thoughts along those lines? Anybody else have different perspectives on that? I don't want to sound like I'm coming in overly strong on that. I feel like I did.
I will just note that I believe I was trying to pull up my April meeting minutes, but there was discussion about this when someone on the board, Al, I can't remember if it was you or someone asked about alternative locations such as Volcano Stadium, Chemeketa, and there was a response that in terms of having explored many of those, I think part of it might come down to Willamette being a willing partner. Well, I agree with Keith that some of this is outside, gets to the edges of our domain, but just knowing that I think some of that work could happen. I know there was this question did come up. I was trying to pull up what Rob was just referring to. You said it was in the attachment.
Attachment 3, that's the final response at the very end.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. And I guess similar to that line of thinking, right, is if Willamette already had this in place, I don't think we would have a say over whether or not Salem baseball would be able to be there or not, kind of assuming all of the things in the existing agreement follow, right? Did I see one of you had your hand
This
up,
is
right?
something different, so
Okay.
if this.
Go for it, Joan. I think we're ready to move on.
I just want to make sure that I understand that this agreement can be dissolved by either party at any time. Is that correct? Did I read that right? Or it's not as easy as it sounds.
I believe, if I can recall, is it renews on an annual basis. And so there is, I mean, any agreement can always be canceled, right? And so I think regardless of where you're at. So yes, I think you're reading that correctly, that it is possible for this agreement to be ended by either party, at least within an annual basis. And I believe November 1st is the kind of deadline for providing that notice, at least in kind of the formal termination of the agreement.
Right, and then Dylan was talking about a discussion every
Yes.
year, and if things need improvement. A lot of times things aren't perfect, new things aren't perfect, and we have to go revisit them, so.
Correct, and
Yeah.
so by providing that, the recommendation in there for the annual discussion is it makes, in some ways, it makes sure it's not just an automated renewal of the agreement, right? And it makes sure that there's a conscious effort moving forward between both parties to ensure these impacts are and the uses are meeting their intention. Debbie.
I understand what you're saying, that if Willamette decided to do this on their own and take the $3 million and put in the artificial turf, they could have done it without the Parks Board, it sounds like, having any say in it. I understand that. And that would have been for the purpose of improving access for the kids of Salem and, access to sports and that type of stuff, which I think is the primary reason I would be in favor of it. But the fact that it's commercial brings in the whole traffic problem, the whole trampling problem, the whole parking problem. And I also still have questions that it does bring into our waste stream microplastics and PFAS and things like that. And I would still like some answers about that, even though I have no control over whether they do that or not. I still would feel better about it if I understood that it was post-consumer recycled plastic. If they were definitely not gonna use crumb rubber, if they were gonna use the olive pits or something instead, I would feel a lot better if I knew those answers. But I think that the traffic problem and the congestion problem, the trampling problem, that's a big issue. And I think that Dylan's addressed a lot of that. But it's still, if the traffic could come from Mission Street through the park, I think that the trampling problem wouldn't be a big issue. But the fact that there's not the parking there means that they would be spread out at this point. And I don't know how many people will choose to take, transportation from Willamette, how many people would not want to get on the bus and just find a parking spot and cut through the park. So I still have reservations about that.
Yeah. That's my response to that. Yeah. And I guess my thought there is, I think you're right, in terms of crowd management. One of the public commenters commented on that, you can get the crowds to go where you want. And so I think that's certainly a concern I have. I guess my thought is, my hope is that in the annual discussions and the elements laid out in the plan here, right, of ensuring parking availability, ensuring the encouragement of other parking, there are ways to enforce the parking aspect, right, in terms of the requiring ticket holders to have passes on their vehicles when they park for certain events at the university, and those permits not being allowed next to the city, right? That there are maybe ways they might get overly complicated to enforce that. But I think my hope is that if there are those, an expectation is that if there are those issues, that there would be attempts to address that. Other thoughts?
I might add in something just from my perspective on turf facility improvements. Like, yeah, there's going to be probably a lot more microplastic waste coming into our watershed without a doubt, right? I mean, and that's a part of what we're going with. But I will say, if with an ask for Willamette University, and this is just for consideration of this body, is if we ask Willamette University to go with more recycled plastics and things like that, I 100% agree with that. There's actually some cork alternatives and they last forever on what's called a GMAX test, right, for turf. But the maintenance and the cost associated with that for the university would be another substantial cost, especially if they're already giving the city and the school districts a lot of use of that turf. It costs a lot of money to maintain, and it's an appeal area, so people want to play on turf. But again, the main concern for me is, are we asking Willamette to do anything extra for this easement? Because they are asking to have the easement, right? They could do whatever they want to do with the turf anyways, it sounds like, but they're asking for that easement on the park property, which could potentially be detrimental to public use. They're going to improve that trail, but what else are we asking them of? Like, what else can they do for Parks and Recreation? Are they going to provide some sort of rental fee for that space? Because the way that I see it is the budget could use some help, right? Economically, though, they're going to drive in a bunch of people. Parking is going to be a huge issue. Are they going to shuttle people in? I agree with all of the statements said. But in the perspective of the university, it sounds like they're making some substantial maintenance costs are going to go into that for that university. And that we should know about that. It costs a lot of money for that turf. Probably more than $3 million long term. But anyways, that's just what I have to add.
Great, thank you, Zachary. Thoughts on that? Or other comments, points?
Sorry, go ahead.
Debbie and Zachary, in terms of the microplastics, is there a way to So we've got the draft, the motion's been made, it's owned by the floor now, right? Is there a bullet point we could add to that motion that could address, highlight, emphasize, otherwise acknowledge that particular concern around microplastics?
Well, I think.
For instance, it was mentioned a university professor, monitoring microplastics, right? Like, that could be something we recommend the city and the university work together on, right? Is monitoring the microplastic runoffs into the creek. Like that type of bullet point request on there.
Yeah, I mean, the two things beside, I think the city, Mickey told me that the city was planning on monitoring wastewater at some point for PFAS, I don't know about microplastics, but.
We're talking the whole city.
Yes, but that would include this.
Sure.
And there is a catch basin. The crumb rubber instead, not using that, because that's a big source of microplastics and PFAS too, I believe. And then maybe considering what's the advantage and disadvantage of post-consumer plastic, because that's already in the waste stream, somebody's waste stream, and we're taking it out of that waste stream. So I don't know if that's gonna break down faster, if it's something that the companies don't want to use because it's not as durable, but it's something I'd like to know about.
You may, please, Dylan. Sorry, I was drafting a
No, it's all right.
potential
I
bullet
was
point.
gonna suggest something like what Keith said, is that we could make another recommendation that's kind of a condition of approval to say, I'm addressing this. And I mean, I'll just say, like, I work in the environmental field, I'm very aware, and I've been on both, thinking about the impacts of microplastics, and there's a lot of challenging things with that. I also understand that as Zach was getting at, the technology is evolving really quickly. Some of these things are really expensive right now, hopefully can come down in cost, that's a consideration. And then I also think there's the perspective to bring in that, as we've heard, there are not really a lot of turf access fields right now. And so as a result, I think, Willamette, you were saying you're playing home games at Linfield, right? If I remember correctly. And that part of the draw we're hearing is for folks to come in. And so it's a tough challenge of looking at the long-term health benefits and impacts, and then also the fact that people are not able to play the sport as it stands right now. And knowing that we do have the natural fields for people to still use, but then have this as kind of a backup, so to speak, of if it's raining out, we can use this. And so it's kind of giving us some options. That being said, obviously, I don't want to end up making a decision that creates 50 years down the line, we realize this is, a huge health impact for all of our children playing. So I think trying to have something in there that, I like the idea of both the encouraging of post-consumer content and best available technology or something. Zach, maybe you could help us with some wording on that. Sorry, did you say you introduced yourself as Zach, right? Or do you prefer Zachary? I want to make sure.
Zach is great.
All
Thank
right,
you.
just want to make sure. Thank you. So I think that could be a good part. And then I really like your idea of having microplastics testing or encouraging a partnership between the university and the city or something that has that be part of it. That can go into an environmental science type course or something. I know university does a lot of great work there. And that could be something that, as part of this annual review, looking at different remediation strategies, whether it's different catch basins, et cetera. And then maybe ultimately that does mean replacing with more cost-effective technology later on down the line. And that's something we can continue to look at. But I think it's a great conversation to have and something that would make a very worthy bullet point here.
Rob, the draft motion document that you pulled up, can we pull that back up and share that? And assuming the group is feeling like heading down that road of a modified or additional bullet point, we can do that right now on the fly.
This is a
Please.
process. I think it would be cleanest if we introduced if there was a new motion introduced to amend the motion that's on the floor.
That is correct.
Do you have wording? And I want me to amend my own motion?
I had wording and then kept modifying my wording.
Would you all like me to take a stab at this? So I move an amendment to my motion, my original motion, to encourage the use of best available turf technology such as post-consumer recycled content, as well as testing for microplastics, including the exploration of a partnership between the university and the city on an annual basis.
Maybe the crumb rubber too.
Please,
There are alternatives. to that
friendly
already.
amendment to
There are-
add crumb rubber to my list when I said what I had in there as well, please. Did I capture all of your points? Yes.
So how about encourage best management practices such as alternative build materials to crumb rubber, adding post-consumer waste, as well as testing for microplastics.
What's the organic one?
So
You guys talk about elephants and.
the organic, okay. So integrate best management practices such as organic fill materials, use of post-consumer materials, and as well as we're encouraging the city and Lamb University to partner for testing for microplastics.
And related, okay, so yeah, I think maybe we can do broader and say like and related potential contaminants.
And while we're in friendly amendment stage, I think adding on to the end of that, right, if you're gonna test for it, having something that responds to that test, right, so remediation efforts, something that gets at remediation in response to the test if deemed necessary.
We have a friendly Zoom call.
I know this is an 11th hour comment, but my son and his family had a home in Flagstaff that had the artificial turf. You could not walk on it barefooted in the summertime. It was so hot. And I'm wondering about the heat that gives off. I have no, I mean, here we are, climate action, trees, and we're creating something that's gonna make more heat. And it's not a small area either. Just
May I
throwing that in there.
I propose we close the amendment. And then
Let's close the amendment.
And
Can we get it read back
Okay, here we go.
in one fell swoop?
So all of that plus.
Well, just that, we're gonna vote on
amendment-
the motion,
the
because
amendment
we're
was-
making the
yes.
motion to amend, nobody's
The
actually seconded that yet.
motion to amend would add to this that we encourage best management practices such as the use of natural fill materials and post-consumer waste materials, as well as the city and Willamette University testing for microplastics and related pollutants and remedying pollutants found at higher levels. I don't know if you want to clarify that last part.
I think that works.
I think organic is better than natural. I don't know
Organic,
what else
okay.
could be natural that's not organic.
Yeah, that's a good point.
if I could make one other adjustment, can you read me, you said best management practices at the start, correct?
Yes.
Could we also say best management practices and technologies?
Okay.
I also want to just get at what Zach was suggesting about there being some some opportunities on the market already that might be better usage here. And so encouraging the university to make sure that there is at least a cost benefit assessment being done. And some of these might be brand new products that are astronomical in cost, but some of them might be pretty cost effective. And so wanting that to be usable.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. I'm going to consider that motion read. It may not be the most elegantly worded, but we're there. We got all the thoughts in. Is there a second on that motion? To the motion to amend the motion that's on the floor? We need a second. I'm counting Dylan as having made it. Okay, thank you, Debbie. Motion to amend is seconded by Debbie. Any other thoughts or discussion on that motion? Is everybody clear on what motion we're talking about? You can even pick people back up. Thank you. Alan, Zachary, we're good on what we're kind of doing here process wise? So we're amending the original motion. We're gonna vote on the motion to amend.
We are tracking.
Cool. Excellent. I'm gonna call that vote and we'll do a voice vote on that.
Just to be clear, we're not voting on the whole thing. We're just voting.
Correct. We're voting on the motion to amend the motion. Excellent. We're gonna start with Dylan.
Aye.
Al.
Aye.
Debbie.
Aye.
Joan.
Aye.
Mauricio.
Aye.
Zachary.
Aye.
Alan.
Aye.
Excellent. And I'm an aye as well, so that motion to amend the motion is approved unanimously. That bullet point will be added to the motion that you've seen on the screen. And so now we're back to considering the original motion that is on the floor, which includes 5, now 6 bullet points. Maybe it was 4 to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bullet points. Of recommendations that we consider, or that we recommend city council add to this, or make sure in some ways incorporated into this agreement with Willamette University. Further discussion? Thank you, Al.
I remain unconvinced of the benefits where it's located versus the objection of nearby residents because of the contrast between possible alternatives. I am yet uninformed, unknown about why we couldn't have it in another place without the objections.
May I make a request that we bring either Willamette or somebody involved to expand on their response to
Yes.
Is that allowed if it's deliberation and we request?
We can ask questions. Rob, are you able to speak to, or?
You seem hesitant.
No, I think it's okay.
Yeah. Can we have, Robert, it's Luke. Get my names confused. Luke, yeah, if you guys could step up and speak to, the selection of Willamette University, and why Al, your question is why the university and not other locations?
It seems to be kind of obvious that Willamette wanted to improve their field and they got help to do it. And that's, in the course of doing it, we generously offered to extend that improvement to include some things that would make it more attractive to other people. And that's well and good, but I don't think those additions or the attractions for sharing the facility are adequate to compensate for the detriments that it will make. And I'm not convinced that it's in the sentiment of the original land grant terms, public property, public park and recreation playground use. I just feel like it's not an appropriate expansion in that location when it's well needed elsewhere.
Okay, I think that's fair. Alan.
I'm still concerned about the character and nature of the agreement itself. I see too many clauses that end with negotiate in good faith. And I've been down that road many times and it can get expensive and it can be detrimental to the good of the organization. I'm mostly concerned about what other activities this would open up and how free, I use that term loosely, the Salem Kaiser School District will get to use that facility as well as the city for other activities. So I have some reservations about that. And there's no perfect contract or agreement, but it just seemed like to me the term was just a little too loose in definition.
Thank you, Alan. Do you have, and similar, Al, do you guys, again, kind of how we handled the microplastics, right? Are there things that we could suggest be changed in this agreement?
Not at this time. And probably this is a new type of agreement. And this is sort of a new venture, both for the city and Willamette. And while I strongly support the youth sports activities, I also strongly support better and improved sports venues. But I'm just worried about, where does this agreement go from here? To me, it's just a little too loosely wrapped. But that's just my concern and based on past history.
Thank you, Alan. And actually your comment there jogged a thought in my head as I was reading the agreement. So it's a restated revised agreement, and yet we're still using 1982 in there.
Yeah, that's one of them.
And I'm curious as to why, if Rob or somebody can speak to that. And one of my thoughts in terms of the consequence of that is there's then a specific reference to Salem Kaiser School District being able to use the facilities for 10 years. And like, there's no clarity on, is that 10 years from 1982? Like where is that 10-year mark starting, right? I mean, in theory, there's just no clarity on that. And I know we're all entering an understanding, but again, similar to Dylan's thoughts about getting things in writing and in the agreement is it's wonderful for us all to be in a room now together, understanding what it all means, but in 5 years down the road, if we've all moved on to other things, making sure the people that are in the room there still understand, so.
Yes, so I think the first part of that is the date on the agreement, and
Correct.
that is to have a record and acknowledgement of the initiation of the relationship between the two parties. And that is when the first agreement was reached that allowed the baseball field and its related facilities to be developed where it is today.
Okay.
Regarding the 10-year limit, I think it's clear the intent that would be moving forward, not retroactive. I can certainly pass that comment on to our city attorney as we advance this forward, assuming it does get endorsed by SPRAB. And we can look at how we could clarify that language.
And I think it does, the intent is there, but by having it all start with 1982, it reads as if some of the rest of the statement is the 1982 statement, which maybe some of it is, but it's unclear what's newly being added versus what is from the existing document. And so so one could read that and be like, well, that was part of the original 1982 agreement, right? And not having that kind of comparison there. So there's a few pieces there that are technical corrections that need to be made. Alan, did you have another thought?
No, actually, that pretty much sums up. I would like to say, for the record, that I'm agonizing over this agreement. But I would say that Dylan's motion has given me some comfort and confidence. And I certainly appreciate his thoughts and adding that to the agreement.
Okay, thank you, Alan.
I was
yes,
just,
Alan,
I
so we
saw
got
those. I was just gonna say that Alan is 100% right. When you do a facility like this, those facility use agreements, they have to be really, really defined ahead of time. Because what does it mean that Salem Kaiser School District is going to have access to this field as well? That's good and all, but if the university has priority, they're always going to have a practice during the time that they could just say, hey, we're having a practice, actually you can't get on that field. We run into that all the time over at Western Oregon with athletics, using turf fields that belong to campus recreation. And that's why I asked previously if there was a good relationship going into this, because like Alan says, in good faith doesn't mean anything, really. That just means that both people are going to have smiles on their face when they tell each other no. Yeah, I just wanted to agree with what Alan said.
Great, thank you, Zachary. Thoughts on that, Dylan?
I would just clarify, so the wording in here, it says Salem Kaiser School District as set forth in an agreement to be negotiated by the university and Salem Kaiser School District with a minimum of 10-year access. So I think just once again, scope question is not that I disagree with everything. I definitely agree with adding specificity wherever possible, but also noting that my understanding is that's a separate conversation taking place where there's separate agreements in terms of what access they're getting, et cetera. And so once again, just trying to thread this line of what is it that we as SPRAB can articulate and should dictate in this agreement versus it sounds, as this is worded here, that there is a separate process taking place with the school district and the university to deal with some of those good faith agreements.
And so you're saying in terms of Zachary's thoughts of need to lay that out, this is the visionary document that says we want to explore that. There will be another agreement specifically between Salem Kaiser School District and the university that spells out what that looks like.
That is my understanding and also would then therefore be outside of the purview of SPRAB.
Outside of this particular agreement. Okay. Rob, did you have other thoughts?
I just, if I could speak to that.
Yes,
And,
if you would.
so I think that was placed in there just as a, you know, again, to say this is going to happen, but we are actively in conversation with Salem Kaiser Schools to have that discussion about what does that look like? What, you know, what are the details of that? And those conversations, again, have been existing since Laura Tiffin was involved in this conversation 2 years ago. And so we're very close to that final agreement, but that, yes, that will be a separate agreement that will detail what the school district needs from that space, what we're able to provide. And so I don't know that it's in there just to memorialize it, but it's not, the specifics of that agreement aren't in there.
Okay.
For that reason. Does that make sense?
I think that
Sometimes
makes
don't
sense
make
for
sense
this,
even
for
when
the
I-
level that this document is intended to be. I think that makes good sense. There's gonna be a number of procedural elements that have to be spelled out beyond what is in this document. And so that's good to know. I do think kind of to that particular concern, right, with the addition of the idea of having annual meetings to review this, right? That school district agreement, or at least the vision of it, is in this document, therefore was part of that, potentially part of that review. And if it's deemed to be an issue, right, that's something to then either be resolved, or there's always the risk of the agreement being dissolved overall. So there's that opportunity for kind of a policing check on making sure that they don't just have practice every day and exclude the school as a result. Debbie, thank
One
you.
final comment is, if the tickets that were sold gave directions to Willamette parking and not to the parking at the park. And so people who didn't know better would think that that's where they were supposed to park and take a shuttle. I think that would help alleviate some of them just assuming they're gonna park right next to here. And then, oh, I can't find a parking, let me go to Willamette. So I feel like that would be helpful, at least until we get access to the Salem Health parking if we do.
It's a good thought, Debbie. I'm gonna go around for final thoughts on this. Dylan?
I think this has been, I appreciate everyone's commitment to this and just the complexity of this issue. I think it's something where, you know, we're oftentimes put in a spot, and I've been on SPRAB for this is my 6th year now, and we get in these spots sometimes where we might have thoughts about a bigger issue in totality, and then also trying to figure out what is it that we can influence and how do we try and make the best decisions in terms of what we have control over right now, and trying to figure out how we can mitigate bad things while also trying to promote the better parts of what we agree with. I know a lot of us have talked about the benefits to Salem-based, to having more youth facilities. You know, I personally have a lot of concerns about AstroTurf, but I also understand that there's the trade-offs of the fact that folks are not able to play right now, and so trying to think about some of those aspects. Thinking about the benefits of a lot of these, I want to give credit, you know, as Rob mentioned, that 2 years of this, and it's not over after this meeting. There's still quite a bit to go, as I'm sure you all are very well aware, in terms of many more planning meetings and, you know, approvals that need to happen. And so trying to figure out, I think there's an opportunity for us to really make sure that something like this, which is, I see as a very unique situation in terms of the park usage, and having something that dates back to 1982 and having a lot of these agreements already in place, that we can add some guardrails in there. I think we've put some very reasonable things in place that council will hopefully execute on, and, you know, Councilor Varney hopefully taking back to your colleagues, and we can all write a separate letter to kind of endorse that as well, but saying these are what we believe are reasonable opportunities to make sure this project is, or this opportunity is as beneficial as possible to both the community, the park, and limiting impacts. You know, I think there's been a lot of hearings and public comment responses and responses to Q&A. And I think that there's always going to be questions. And so trying to make sure that we see how this plays out year after year, seeing how the fan base develops, seeing all those different things, seeing how often the school district actually uses it. Those are all questions that we can continue to revisit. And, you know, there are already some things in place there about dark sky certification of the lighting and how the speakers are being directed into the stadium. And so I think my hope is that some of that will continue in using the good faith wording, but we're also putting in that requirement that every year we're actually going to look at those things. And so hopefully that means that users of Bush Park, including myself, taking my kids there to walk around, can always find a parking spot. And then there are simple remedies like having game day parking signs in the Willamette lot and having enough tickets and things like that that can really drive people there. So I personally am in favor of moving this forward to council, knowing that there's a long road ahead and that we're putting in some good guardrails to hopefully make sure the park system is protected.
Thank you, Dylan. Al?
I remain unconvinced of the benefits contrasting to the impacts that it will likely have. And the lack of effort in developing Northeast. I think that I remain unconvinced of its long-term benefits. Despite the fact that there are good things that could happen, it's just they're in the wrong place in my judgment.
Thank you, Al. Debbie?
Well, I'm really torn. I think it's really scary to think about something happening to Bush Park. But the kids don't get enough attention in this, I think, in this community, and I think it's a real opportunity for them. And I would not be for it if we weren't going to really address the parking and overcrowding issues. I think that's something that needs to be looked at after it's in place. And if Salem Health does, after it's passed or whatever, agree to parking, I think that would be huge. Solve a lot.
Great. Joan?
Oh, well, I understand all the interest in some of these issues. And I would hope that in the discussions, the annual discussions, that there are measurable benefits that we can say, okay, well, the city, we're able to use that facility, X number of times, and we wouldn't have been able to do it without something like that. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Joan. That's a good idea. I'm jotting down some of these thoughts, even though they won't necessarily be in our motion. My hope is to, if we pass this motion, whatever our outcome is, my hope is to convey that in a letter to city council. And so kind of trying to capture the perhaps broader range of discussion topics that we've had. So Mauricio, thoughts?
Just generally, the agreement has been in place since 1982, and the way I look at it, I think Bush Park is still healthy and attractive, and I think the agreement has functioned appropriately. So nothing too alarming, but I mean, it does make you a little uneasy when things are being reviewed and looked at and amended and adjusted. So I think we had a proper conversation, and I think the amendments that we're making to it that were suggested, I think are appropriate. So I'm comfortable with it.
Great, thank you, Mauricio. Zachary.
I'm super happy to be on this board and listen to all the for the fact that Willamette's coming to us and they want to have some easement space on the park and they're inviting us all to talk to them. I mean, I think that when they actually say good faith, that's probably what they mean. But yeah, I mean, I'm very comfortable with what we have moving forward, knowing that it falls on city council and the relationship between the school districts and the city between on what those actual facility use agreements end up looking like. And with our addition, with the concern of the environmental impact that's going to have, that's fantastic. So I'm comfortable where we are. I could vote to move this forward.
Zachary. Alan?
Just as a point of full disclosure, I have a daughter who holds 2 degrees from Willamette. That does not change. That does not sway my opinion one way or the other. But I appreciate all of the thoughts, and I appreciate the willingness of this board to protect the citizens and protect our parks and protect our city. Make sure we're getting the best deal we can.
Great, thanks, Alan. I think with that, with those final thoughts, I'll give us all a moment to think. But then I'm going to call the question, and I'll just go back around the room in the same order, and we'll do a recorded vote on the question of the amended motion, or the motion as amended. I'm not sure the proper way to say that. The motion as amended. We're looking for yes or no answer. So Dylan, I'll start with you.
Aye.
Al,
No.
Debbie,
Aye.
Joan,
Yes.
Yes.
Mauricio, yes. Zachary. And Alan.
You guys have convinced me. I will vote yes, but it's primarily the result of the work of this committee today. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan, and I will also be in a yes vote to move this forward. So the motion passes. Thank you all for that good discussion. I think this is it's an important agreement, important consideration. Thanks all for the public comment and engagement and some of the written public comments we've received. It's passed an issue, and I think you know, moving this forward, we'll be able to kind of outline some of these challenges and concerns that we know we have and that we know need to be addressed in this agreement and between the city and the university moving forward. All right, with that, I'm gonna move us quickly. I know we're over time here. Alan, yeah, you got thoughts?
I apologize, but I know this is important. I'm on my way to Alaska, and so I have to leave the meeting at this point, but I was waiting long enough to speak to this issue and vote. So thank you so much. And I apologize for leaving early.
That's all right, Alan. Thank you. Safe travels and enjoy. I'm now super jealous of you. So have a good time. Dylan would like to make a comment. Yes.
Just, Keith had mentioned possibly a letter to the council, and I just wanna, I don't know if we need to endorse that, but I would just suggest, I think that's a great idea, and I'm willing to help craft such a thing if possible.
Thank you, Dylan. And I guess I'll just throw it out, not necessarily for a specific motion, but does anyone have any concerns with Dylan and I crafting a letter to council to kind of convey the outcomes of this discussion in the motion?
No, you always do an excellent job. Both of you.
Thank you, Jen.
Super.
And I think our hope would be, or my hope would be, that we can articulate a little bit more about some of the microplastics in particular and some of those concerns.
There's only so much you can get
Yeah.
into
Our
one motion. So,
recognizing our wording is a little bit on the fly, and we can use a little bit more time to explain what we were trying to get at there. Rob, I think you did an excellent job, but we can build that out a little bit.
And I think commenting about more specifically some of the public comments we've heard as well. Knowing city council will also have an opportunity for public comment, but I want to make sure that folks know that we are listening and that we've heard them and that we want to make sure we're conveying those thoughts and concerns that may not be fully articulated in a particular motion. So would you pop open that door for Ian there? Thank you. Sorry.
Everyone, I also have to hop off. I am 10 minutes behind on my next meeting.
Thanks, Zachary. Good to have you on the board.
I apologize. Thank you. I'm glad we got to a vote today, y'all. This is really cool. Thank you again for the opportunity. But yeah, I gotta go. I gotta go to a meeting.
Yeah, middle of the workday. Thanks for joining in. We just have a
Thank
few
you all.
quick items. Research committee assignments. This is just a reminder to continue on those. The spread letter on Parks and Recreation budget that was included in your packet. So just as that was just an FYI that was conveyed. The city council has advanced the budget at their last meeting, and they will be looking to approve the budget in June 24th. 25th,
Yes.
June 25th is when the budget will be approved or up for approval, I should say, by city council. And so that's where that is. I feel like I had one more thing in board member updates.
You were correct, it was the 24th.
I thought I was correct. June 24th. June 24th. We have on that, yes, go for it.
I just want to give kudos, you know, we all, Keith and I were able to share out the letter that we all wrote to council and you know, it's endorsing the budget committee recommendation. And I don't know if anyone had a chance to look at the comments or to see the meeting, but a lot of people turned out in favor of the parks. There was public comment in support of parks and just really, I think, you know, the library community has done a really good job of raising awareness about the impacts of the library. And I think there was a really good showing for parks this time. So appreciate everyone that was able to kind of help elevate that issue. And hopefully as this continues to move forward, you know, we're at a little bit of a Band-Aid approach right now in our budget of trying to fix things. And you know, this is going to be a recurring issue. We're gonna have to face it again. And so making sure we get people aware of what those impacts can be and showing up to council. So just a thank you to everyone in the community and to all of you that helped with that. And hopefully we see more of that.
Thank you, Dylan, and thanks to Dylan for helping draft that letter as well. Any comments or questions on the written reports?
It's really good to see all those trees getting planted.
Excellent. And then we have one item of new business, I think, if we're prepared to discuss it, July meeting.
Oh, yes, yes.
Are we prepared to discuss it?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, right, because this is our last meeting before the next time. So July meeting, we are going to move, we're gonna cancel our regular July meeting. I do not have the date that was scheduled for. July 11th, so we are canceling our July 11th meeting, and we are going to schedule a special meeting for the week of July 22nd.
And I just add, I think that the purpose of the special meetings, we're also contemplating canceling August. I believe because there's a conflict.
Yeah.
But part of the July conflict is the fact that most of staff is on vacation that week,
Correct.
correct? And so we don't have any staff support for the current time, so looking at a new time to adjust.
Look at any time because we have some other important agenda items that we'll be looking to consider in July. So I don't know if we have a particular date selected for that, but we were looking at the week of July 22nd.
That's correct.
Does anybody have any immediate
Well,
thoughts?
I have a problem. I'm organizing a blood drive at our church on July 25th,
On the
which is
25th?
a Thursday.
Okay,
And so I'm just one person, but I can't be here. But I was gonna encourage you to give blood.
well, I'm not
We can
sure,
hold the meeting there.
I'm not sure we're gonna necessarily have it on the Thursday. It'll be anytime that
Oh,
week,
okay.
right? We're looking at any day that week. So good to know
Okay.
you're not available that Thursday.
Right.
Does anybody else know of any immediate conflicts that week?
Would it still be 1 o'clock?
I think that is an option to change as well. It's a special meeting, we can declare whatever we'd like. With appropriate notice, of course.
1 o'clock, I have some appointments later in the day, but.
Okay, so you're good with 1 o'clock-ish still, anytime that
On
week?
Thursday,
No, not necessarily Thursday, any time that week
August 20.
of
Oh,
July.
Okay.
And I guess if anything comes up, notify me and or Rob in the next couple days, and we're gonna look to get that solidified and on the calendar here soon. So look for a notice, I guess, from us on kind of when, what day, what time, and where that will all be. So apologies for having to kind of need to adapt that, but summer schedules get a little hectic.
And just to clarify, it will be a hybrid format, as that's required by our city's policies.
Good point.
So Saturday and Sunday, or Saturday before that is the Ironman in the park. So there's exciting, fun things happening there. I'll be kayaking with him, escorting him down the river.
Nice.
That's fun.
I'm at one of the rest stations, I'm volunteering.
Oh, you guys are so good. That's very cool. Okay, that's good enough. Thank you. All right, well, so just look for that kind of final announcement on when our meeting will be. Any other new business that we had? Anybody else have anything we need to chat about?
Oh, I learned that there is an emerald ash borer monitoring program underway, and it's good and reassuring to know that that's in place. They're hanging some apparatus in trees and you're sticking to them, and they'll be monitoring them for months.
Yep.
It was an interesting thing. I just had to inquire about this device hanging up in the tree. I wanted to know what it was, and they answered it. So I'm glad to see that it's a good thing.
Agreed.
Do we have a tree inventory, like, for our parks?
We do.
Oh, yeah.
Well, more, yes.
So we know how many ash trees we have?
I don't know if I would go quite that far.
I don't think.
I don't know if Tyler's actually available. He's on right now, but he's been doing a lot of GPSing of city-owned trees. I don't know if he can give us a
I can
count
give
of
a few
species.
short words on this, if Mylan leads, we'll let him speak then. Just
Oh, yeah,
real
say
briefly.
what?
Yes, Mylan, I say, if you're there, go for
Go
it.
for it, Mylan.
Sure, and we have the number of ash trees on city property in the right of way, and in some of our parks. Obviously, we haven't done any of the natural areas in Minto or some of our larger natural areas, but for the most part, we have a pretty good idea on right of way ash trees. But and we're working with ODF and ODA on the traps that you've seen. We also have Mediterranean oak borer traps now placed in the numerous parks, some in Bush, and some other parks. I think we have a total of 5 Mediterranean oak board traps out as well. So you might see those. Those are on the ground and look sort of like the rain chain collector. There's just other sticky traps near some of our higher oak populations if you see those out in the park. But yeah, we could give you a number. The majority of our parks, except for Minto, on the number of ash trees we have in our inventory.
That inventory work continues to be very awesome.
Just to clarify, Mauricio, Mylan is the urban forester. Okay, just so in case that wasn't clear, realize that as someone new, you might not know, it's just Mylan's eye.
Yeah, I mean, I just have experience with Emerald Ash Borer being, having, business in the Beaverton, area where that's really been, impacted. So it's important to get ahead of it.
Sure.
They're working on it.
All right, anything else, team?
Just want to mention that, that Mauritius agreed to join us, because we're thrilled that there's a landscaper, on our two-stroke engine project.
Oh, perfect.
Already.
On the research committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been involved with City of Portland with their, blower, policy.
Excellent.
So there's.
Way to rope them in on that real
Yeah,
quick.
right
Well done. All right, excellent. Well, thanks all for the good discussion today. Important considerations for us.